Hi, everybody. Let me begin by thanking all of you who prayed for me this last week or so. This cold just really caught up with me. And I really honestly think it's the first time in 20 years that I haven't been able to be at worship services because of some kind of an illness. And I thank the Lord for that, but wanted to make sure I thank you for your support and your kindness to me and to my dear family. This last weekend is looking back now, you're going to have the opportunity to dialogue and discuss a little bit about Psalm 145. And we use it really as the basis for talking about the greatness of God and His faithfulness here at Emmanuel Faith Church. And we highlighted the main challenge, that of never forgetting God's greatness. And we don't ever want to do this and do that. And you have lots of questions that have been given to you for your small group interaction about how we go about not forgetting. And this is a good opportunity. Have you ever forgotten God's greatness and instead got focused upon man's greatness? You ever lost sight of what God was doing? This is a good opportunity for you to talk a little bit about your experience. But there was one verse in Psalm 145 that I just didn't have time to explain. And it comes to us in verse 7. King David, as you remember, writing this great psalm of praise, it's really his commitment to live a life of praise. And he says this in verse 6, "Men shall speak of the power of your awesome acts, and I will tell of your greatness. They shall eagerly utter the memory of your abundant goodness." It was interesting in my preparation to discover that this verb that's translated here as eagerly utter, the NIV translates the word as celebrate. It's the Hebrew word nabah. That means to gush forth, even translated to be bubbling over, much like a well of water bubbles over. And the idea behind it is that the mighty works, the awesome acts, the goodness and greatness of our God, and our memory of that ought to just bubble out of us. It ought to just overflow out of our lives. But the only way that we will do that is if up in verse 4 and 5 and 6, we're meditating on His wonderful works, His glorious splendor. And I started thinking about this in my own experience. I don't know if you've ever been around somebody that was just a little too spiritual. Do you understand what I'm saying by that? It just seems a little forced to me. Well, I've discovered in my own life that I can force some spirituality when I am too busy, when I haven't taken the time to meditate, to think, and to dwell, be quiet about God's greatness and His goodness and to ponder it. And when I slow down and I actually think about just how great God is and spending time in His Word and just spending time with Him, it's amazing of how that praise starts to bubble up. It's just amazing how it starts to then overflow as we start to actually get excited, as we recognize God's hand and God's great acts really in everything that we do. And so I don't know if this resonates with any of you, but as in my preparation, it was resonating with me of my need to slow down, to make sure that I keep my focus and not forget God's greatness, but to focus on His greatness. And as I do that, then I begin to see His hand, and as I see His hand, then it gives me something inside of my heart that just kind of gets lit on fire. So I'd like for you to share some of this. I don't know if this is resonating, as I mentioned, with any of you, but to take some time to dialogue about all of this. God has been so good to us here at Emmanuel Faith Community Church, and that might even be your opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the blessings and the greatness of God that you've seen in our own local assembly. So I hope that you have a great time together. I'm thrilled that you continue to practice this biblical value of connecting, and that your experience with other people in the body of Christ just continues to grow. So thanks again for your prayer support. I'll look forward to being back with you next weekend after Mother's Day. So blessings on you.